This small taiga village was located on the edge of the river, not far from a tiger den. Nicholas lived near the forest on the edge of the village with his family, his wife, and his daughter. Like most of the local men, he was a hunter. The men never touched the tigers. They knew that they were a rare and endangered species, and so the hunters treated the surrounding nature with respect. Nicholas noticed that a new tigress with 2 cubs recently came to the hunting ground in the taiga. She came to give birth to offspring in a quiet and peaceful place where there weren't a lot of predators, since when the cubs are small, there are many dangers that they can encounter. When the tigress is on the hunt, anyone can attack the cubs, even predators that aren't that big. Therefore, the experienced mother always tries to find a quiet place to give birth and raise her cubs. Only adult tigresses can give birth to 2 or more cubs. The older the tigress, the more cubs there are in the litter. The man noted the new inhabitant of his area and tried not to cross paths with her in the forest. Moreover, he even fed the animal, since she needed more food to feed her new cubs. Nicholas often hunted an additional boar and left it in the predator's den. The hunter often watched from a secluded place as the tigress discovered the hunter's gift and dragged the carcass to her den. At first, Nicholas didn't know exactly how many cubs the wild animal had, so he decided to trick the mother to find out. The hunter put the carcass of a roe deer he hunted specifically for this purpose a bit further away from the tiger's den. And while the mother went out to get it, lured by the smell of fresh food, Nicholas used this opportunity to check the den. To make sure the tigress didn't notice the foreign smell, the hunter covered himself with earth and clay and rotten leaves. The man came out of hiding and went into the lair, where he saw 2 cubs on a bed of branches and pine needles. There was no time to try and figure out their gender, so Nicholas hurried to leave the den. He didn't really think that his presence could go completely unnoticed. The tigress was most likely well aware of his visit, but she seemed to have let it slide as gratitude for the food he'd been bringing her. She must have understood that the man didn't pose danger to either her or her cubs. The cubs were growing up, and Nicholas was glad that he took a small part in that process. In addition to hunting, the man was also passionate about photography. Besides his gun, he also often brought his camera to the forest. Nicholas had a small blog on the internet where he posted the most successful photos. He didn't expect to suddenly become famous one day, but simply enjoyed doing it and wanted to share his passion with others. Although his pictures of nature and wild animals were actually of very high quality and rather rare. According to Nicholas's estimations, the tigress was going to lead her cubs out of the lair soon, and when that moment finally came, the man was very lucky to have caught it on camera. The cubs explored the area around them under the vigilant supervision of their mother. The pictures turned out to be very interesting and beautiful. One day, as Nicholas was doing his rounds, he heard the heart-rending cries of one of the cubs coming from the lair. Forgetting all about the precautions, the hunter hurried to the lair and was dumbfounded by what he saw. A huge bear was trying to grab the defenseless creature while neither the mother nor the second cub were around. Something had to be done. Nicholas threw up his gun and fired a blank shot. The bear got scared and ran away, leaving the little animal alone. The man ran to the tiger cub. He wanted to see if it wasn't injured, but then he heard the tigress coming from the bushes. Deciding not to risk it, the hunter went home, but he couldn't stop worrying if everything was fine with the little animal. The next morning, Nicholas's wife, Bella, was clearing the yard as usual. Fresh snow fell at night, and large footprints were clearly visible near the house. At first, the woman thought that a hungry animal had come into their yard in search of food. But a few minutes later, she heard whining. There was a tiger cub lying near the gate. It could hardly move. Taking a look around, Bella noticed the tigress standing at a distance with her other cub. The animals behaved calmly and didn't show any signs of aggression, as if they were waiting for something. Having shared the news with her husband, all the puzzle pieces fell into place in the woman's mind. The tigress brought her wounded cub to the hunter, hoping that he could help. Nicholas and his wife took the animal into the house. There were no serious visible injuries, but there were several cuts on the cub's belly left by the bear's claws, and they were bleeding. Bella disinfected the wounds and applied healing ointment to it. The tiger cub refused to eat on its own, so she had to feed it milk from a baby bottle. Daily dressings and feeding gradually returned the cub to its strength. The little animal started getting better before their very eyes. All this time, the tigress was waiting at her post. At night, the predator went away to hunt, but during the day, she sat on the edge of the forest with her other cub, staring intently towards the house of the young family that was taking care of her wounded cub. Several days passed, and the cub was already feeling great. It started exploring the new environment, running around and sniffing everything, and if something frightened it, the animal squatted and bared its teeth. Nicholas warned his daughter not to tame the wild animal, because he knew that the tiger cub needed to go back to the forest immediately after recovery. Since its family was waiting for it there, it was time for the little predator to return to the forest. Bella carried the cub in her arms, and the hunter accompanied them, holding his gun, because the wild animal could react in any way. As soon as the tigress saw the approaching people, she got up and started impatiently walking from side to side. Halfway over, Bella lowered the cub to the ground and hurried back. As people moved away, the tigress came closer and closer to her cub, and then carefully sniffed and licked it. The tiger cub joyfully jumped around its mother and sibling, playfully biting and poking its nose into its mother. Looking at the people one last time, the tigress turned her head and roared loudly, as if thanking them for saving her cub, and then the family disappeared into the thickets. 6 months after the reunion of the tiger family, Nicholas was doing his regular rounds once again. Of course, the hunter couldn't do without gifts for his old friends. This time, the man brought a bucket full of fresh fish. The hunter planted the food near the lair and hid behind a tree. Tigers quickly ran towards the smell of fresh food and started devouring the fish, purring loudly, like real cats. Nicholas couldn't get enough of the beautiful creatures and made a few more pictures of the striped family. Alive, healthy, and all together. On his way home, the hunter had an accident. His foot slipped on wet branches that were scattered on the ground. Nicholas twisted his ankle and fell. He didn't have the strength to get up. It was a rather stupid situation. An experienced hunter injured his leg in the forest due to simple inattention. Nicholas was hurt and he couldn't move. The pain in his ankle was unbearable. While the man was lying on his back and thinking about what to do, the tigress approached him. Nicholas froze and started saying a mental goodbye to his family and friends. The predator sniffed the hunter, paying special attention to the wounded leg. It seemed that the animal understood what had happened. The tigress grabbed Nicholas by the collar of his jacket and dragged him towards the village. As soon as they could hear the yard dogs barking, she let go of the man and retired into the forest thickets. Thus, the animal thanked the savior for his help. After he recovered, Nicholas often saw the tigress with her cubs in the forest. They were no longer afraid of each other, and the animals often came close to the man. The wild animals seemed to pose for the hunter's camera. That year, he managed to take some very rare shots. Nicholas even decided to use them to participate in several competitions, and he also held an exhibition of his photographs. A few years later, the cubs grew up, and they left their mother. The man couldn't know if the grown-up cubs would treat him as their mother did if they were to come across each other in the forest. Therefore, he no longer risked going far into the thickets, and his leg hurt too, to be honest. Nevertheless, the man and the tigress remained friends, and she often waited for Nicholas in the forest and even accompanied him on his rounds. The man even started noticing that whenever the tigress was around, his hunt was always successful, as if she was driving game for him. In return, Nicholas always shared whatever he managed to hunt with his striped friend.